The war had spread across the stars. Planets burned, cities fell, people were scared, and leaders were desperate. The humans and the Virellians were not friends, but the enemy they faced was strong. They had no choice but to work together. Daniel was a human guard, young but skilled. He had joined the force to protect his people. He had seen battle. He had lost friends. He knew the cost of war. When he got the new assignment, he thought it would be simple. Protect someone. Follow orders. Nothing he hadn't done before. But when he reached the ship, he was told something strange. He would be sharing a chamber with someone that was not normal. Guards usually stayed in their own quarters. This was no normal person. The one he had to protect was a princess, not just any princess. An alien princess. Her name was Elyra. She came from the Virellian royal family. Her people looked different, with silver skin and glowing eyes. They spoke in songs, and they walked with pride. Daniel did not like the idea. He'd fought against Virellians before the alliance. He did not trust them. He did not trust her. But orders were orders. He entered the chamber. It was clean and bright. There were 2 beds, one on each side. The air smelled like flowers. Elyra stood near a table, looking at a small glowing device. She turned when he entered. Her voice was calm but cold. "So you are the human guard. I hope you don't snore," she said. Daniel crossed his arms. "I hope you don't talk in your sleep," he replied. That was how it started. The first day was silent. They stayed on their sides of the room. They spoke only when needed. She asked him not to touch her things. He told her not to give him orders. Every little thing became a problem. One time he turned up the heat. She turned it down. He liked to train in the room. She said his boots were too loud. I went on like this. Outside the chamber, the war continued. Messages came in every hour. Reports of battles lost. Ships destroyed. But inside the chamber, the 2 of them were stuck together. No one came to visit. No one wanted to be near them. Not humans. Not Virellians. Daniel tried to ignore her. He focused on his job. He checked the chamber locks. He studied the ship's layout. He read reports. But he always knew she was watching. Elyra was not lazy. She studied maps. She read books. She spoke to her people through a small screen. She moved with grace, but Daniel saw her worry. She tried to hide it, but he noticed. One night the lights flickered. The ship shook. An alarm rang. The chamber door locked with a loud sound. Daniel jumped to his feet. Elyra stood up too. "What is happening?" she asked. Daniel went to the screen. "I don't know. Looks like a system failure. Could be an attack," he said. They looked at each other. For a moment, the arguments were forgotten. Daniel opened a panel on the wall. Wires sparked. The screen showed static. He tried to contact the bridge. No answer. He looked at Elyra. "We might be on our own," he said. She stepped closer. "Then we work together," she said. Daniel nodded. He didn't say anything more. He pulled out a toolkit and started working on the panel. Elyra held a small light. She watched carefully. They worked for hours. It was not easy. The systems were strange. Some parts were made by humans, some by Virellians, but somehow they made progress. When the power came back, they both smiled. Just a little. That night, they sat on opposite beds, tired and quiet. Daniel looked at Elyra. "Thanks for the help," he said. She looked at him. "You did most of the work. But I'm glad we didn't fail. It was not much, but it was a start." The room was still the same. 2 beds, 1 light, the smell of flowers, but something had changed. The war was still out there, waiting. But inside the chamber, the first wall between them had started to fall. The next day was quiet. Daniel woke up early and began his morning routine. He stretched, did some exercises, and checked the chamber systems. Everything was working fine. Elyra was already awake. She sat at the table, looking at a map of the galaxy. She did not speak, and neither did he. For a while, it seemed like they would go back to being strangers. But when Daniel poured himself some water, he noticed a second cup beside his. Elyra had placed it there without saying a word. He looked at her. She gave him a short nod, then looked back at her map. Daniel said nothing, but he drank the water. A message came through the screen. The ship would reach a border station in 6 hours. Daniel read the rest of the message. It warned of possible enemy movement near the route. Tensions were rising again. Elyra walked over and read the message beside him. "They will test our alliance soon," she said. Daniel nodded. "Let them try." She looked at him, then returned to her seat. For a moment, Daniel wondered what she was thinking. He realized he didn't know much about her, only that she was important. He had never asked about her past. Later during their meal, Elyra spoke first. "Why did you become a guard?" she asked. Daniel thought for a moment. "I wanted to protect people. My father was a soldier. My older brother too. I guess it runs in the family." "Where are they now?" she asked. Daniel's eyes lowered. "My brother died in a battle 2 years ago. My father's retired. He lives on Mars now." "I'm sorry," Elyra said quietly. Daniel gave a small nod. "It's part of the job." She looked down at her plate. "I did not want to be a princess. I had no choice. My mother passed when I was young. My father raised me to be ready for the crown." Daniel listened, surprised she was sharing this. "That sounds like a lot of pressure." "It is," she said. "But I try to do what is right, even if it is hard." They sat in silence for a while. The chamber felt different now, less like a prison, more like a small shelter from the storm outside. Later that day, they were called to a drill. The ship's systems simulated an attack. Red lights flashed. Alarms rang. Daniel and Elyra had to work together. He grabbed his weapon and checked the chamber. Elyra monitored the ship's data and gave warnings. They moved fast, spoke clearly, and backed each other up. After the drill, the officer in charge gave them a good report. "Surprisingly good teamwork," he said. "Keep it up." Elyra smirked. "Did he say surprising?" Daniel chuckled. "He did. Can't blame him." The hours passed. As the ship neared the station, tension grew again. The enemy had been spotted nearby. All guards were on alert. Elyra was told to stay in the chamber for safety. Daniel stood at the door, weapon ready. He checked every sound, every signal. Elyra sat by the window watching the stars. "Do you think they'll attack?" "Maybe," Daniel said, "but we're ready." Suddenly the ship shook. An alarm blared. Daniel ran to the screen. Missiles hit the outer shield. He said, "They're testing our defense." He turned to Elyra. "Stay low. They breached the ship. We moved to the safe zone." She nodded and crouched behind the table. Daniel stood by the door, heart racing. He waited for the next alarm. But after a few minutes, the alert turned green. The ship had pushed back the attackers. Daniel let out a breath. "We're clear." "For now." Elyra stood. "You were calm. That helps." "I'm used to it," he said, "but that doesn't mean I don't get scared." "I do too," she said. They both sat down. The danger had passed, but the fear still lingered. They did not speak for a long time, but the silence between them was no longer cold. It was quiet, calm. They were starting to understand each other. For the first time, Daniel thought that maybe this mission was not just about protecting someone. Maybe it was about learning. Maybe it was about change. And somewhere deep inside, Elyra was starting to think the same. The station was quiet when they arrived. It floated near the edge of a red dwarf star, small and dark, like a lonely watchtower in space. The ship docked without trouble, and the crew moved quickly. Supplies were loaded. Messages were exchanged. Stop was short. Daniel and Elyra were not allowed to leave the chamber. It was for safety. The enemy had spies, even here. They watched the activity through the chamber window. Daniel leaned on the wall, arms crossed. Elyra sat near the table, watching silently. "They treat us like glass," Elyra said. Daniel shrugged. "You are important. They don't want to take chances." She frowned. "And you? You're not important?" He gave a small laugh. "I'm just the guard." "But you have saved me once already," she said. "Maybe more than once." Daniel didn't know how to answer. No one had ever called him important like that. He looked at her, and she was serious. A knock came at the chamber door. A message was slipped through the slot. Daniel opened it and read quickly. The ship received a warning. "Enemy ships are moving near this sector. They plan to launch early. We leave in an hour," he said. Elyra stood up. "Then we must prepare." The chamber grew busy. Daniel checked his gear. Elyra packed her documents and devices. They worked quietly but side by side. No one told them to do it that way. They just did. As the ship left the station, everything was calm at first. But 2 hours later, the lights flickered again. An alarm sounded. This time it was real. Daniel grabbed his weapon. Elyra stood behind him. The enemy had boarded the ship. A small group got through the lower decks. Security was fighting, but they were spread thin. Daniel's communicator buzzed. "Guard Daniel, stay with the princess. Protect her at all cost," the voice said. Daniel looked at Elyra. "We need to move to the secure zone," Elyra nodded. Shh. She trusted him now. He opened the hidden passage behind the chamber wall. They moved fast through the narrow hallways. Red lights blinked. The sound of distant gunfire echoed. Suddenly, a noise came from ahead. Daniel raised his weapon. 2 enemy soldiers turned the corner. He fired. The blast hit the first one. Elyra ducked. The second soldier fired back. Daniel pushed Elyra behind a wall. "Stay down," he said. He rolled to the side and fired again. The second soldier fell. The hallway went quiet. Elyra stood up slowly. "You're bleeding," she said. Daniel looked at his arm. Small cut, nothing deep. "I'm fine. Let's go." They reached the safe zone. A heavy door closed behind them. Daniel activated the locks. They were safe for now. Other guards joined them. A medic checked Daniel's wound. Elyra sat beside him. "You could have been killed." "I've been close before," he said. She looked at him closely. "I don't want you to die for me." "I won't. I'll fight to keep us both alive." The ship shook again. The battle was still going. But in that small room, Daniel and Elyra felt something different. They were not just soldier and royal, they were survivors, side by side. Later, the captain of the ship came to see them. He was an older man with a scar on his face. "You both did well," he said. "You moved fast, saved time, saved lives." Daniel stood straight. "Just doing my duty, sir." Elyra stepped forward. "He did more than duty," Captain smiled. "We could use more like you too. There's talk at command. They're watching. They see how you work together. Might send you on a mission." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "A mission? Nothing confirmed," the captain said. "But keep doing what you're doing." After he left, Elyra looked at Daniel. "Would you take a mission with me?" she asked. Daniel thought for a moment. "If it helps end the war, yes." She smiled. "Then maybe this chamber was not a prison. Maybe it was a beginning." Daniel nodded. "Maybe it was." Outside the safe room, the ship returned to quiet. The enemy had been pushed back. Repairs began. People rested. But inside, Daniel and Elyra had taken another step forward. The war was far from over. But now, they faced it not as strangers, but as something more. Not yet friends, but not enemies either. Something new was growing between them, and neither of them wanted to stop it. The ship traveled for days through quiet space. No attacks came. No new alarms. It felt like peace, but everyone knew it would not last. The enemy was still out there. The war was still going on. But inside the ship, something was different. Daniel and Elyra were no longer strangers. They spoke more now. They shared stories. They even joked sometimes. The chamber no longer felt cold. It felt like a place where something real had started. One evening, Daniel sat near the window, looking at the stars. Elyra joined him. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. "Yes," Daniel said. "The sky is different there. Stars feel closer." "I miss my home too," Elyra said. "Our cities shine in the dark. The towers sing with light. I wonder if they still stand." Daniel turned to her. "We will go back when the war ends." She looked at him. "You believe it will end?" "I have to," he said. "If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be here." The next day, they were called to the command deck. 8. A high-ranking officer stood there, waiting. His name was Captain Harris. He looked serious but calm. "You've been noticed," he said. "Your teamwork, your actions during the last attack, command wants to test you further." Daniel listened carefully. Elyra stayed quiet. "There's a task," the captain said. "A small enemy outpost has been spotted near a moon. We need someone to go there, gather information, and return without being seen. It's dangerous, but not impossible. You two are the best fit." Daniel looked at Elyra. She gave a small nod. "When do we leave?" Daniel asked. "Soon," the captain said. "We'll have a fast ship, just the two of you. No backup unless things go wrong." The mission was clear. Get in, learn what the enemy was planning, and get out. Daniel checked the ship's weapons. Elyra studied the route. They worked late into the night. They were ready. They left the next morning. The ship was small and fast. It moved like a shadow through space. Daniel flew while Elyra watched the scanners. The enemy outpost came into view after 5 hours. It was hidden behind the moon, small but armed. They moved in close. Elyra used a long-range scanner to gather data. Daniel kept the ship steady. "This place is more active than we thought," Elyra said. "I see transport ships and a strange energy signal." Daniel frowned. "Could be a new weapon." They stayed longer than planned. The information was too important. But soon, an alarm rang. The enemy had spotted them. "Time to leave," Daniel said. He turned the ship and flew fast. Enemy fighters chased them. Lasers lit the dark sky. Elyra sent a signal back to the main ship. Daniel flew through debris and narrow gaps. One blast hit their wing. "We're losing speed," Elyra said. "Hold on," Daniel said. He found a small asteroid field and flew into it. The enemy ships followed, but one crashed into a rock. Daniel twisted the ship through the tight spaces. Another enemy ship was lost. "We're almost clear," Elyra said. A final blast shook their ship. Systems blinked. Smoke filled the air, but they made it out. Daniel looked at Elyra. "Are you okay?" She coughed. "Still alive, you?" "Same," he said. They flew back to the main ship. The data they brought was enough to change the next step in the war. Command now knew what the enemy was building. They could prepare. Captain Harris met them at the dock. "You did well." "Very well. You brought back more than we hoped." Daniel and Elyra stood side by side, tired but proud. "You make a strong team," the captain said. Later that night, back in their chamber, Elyra sat on her bed. She looked at Daniel. "You saved us again," she said. "We saved each other," he replied. She smiled. "Never thought I would say this, but I'm glad it was you. I'm glad we were assigned to the same chamber." Daniel smiled back. "Me too." Outside, the stars moved slowly. The war had not ended, but something had changed. Two people from two worlds had risked their lives together. They would do it again if needed. Because now, they believed in each other. The enemy outpost mission had changed everything. Daniel and Elyra were no longer just partners by duty. They had become something more. They trusted each other with their lives. People on the ship had started to notice. Some looked at them with respect, others with curiosity. But no one doubted that they made a strong team. One morning, a new message came from command. The leaders of both the human forces and the Virellians had decided to work more closely. A joint mission was planned. Daniel and Elyra were to lead it. The task was clear. A large enemy supply base had been found. If they could destroy it, the enemy would lose fuel and weapons. It would slow down the war. But the mission was dangerous. The base was deep inside enemy space. Daniel met with the team. Half were human soldiers. The rest were Virellians. At first, they didn't speak much. The room was filled with silence and a little tension. But Elyra stepped forward. "We are not enemies," she said. "We have the same goal, fight for peace." Daniel added, "If we don't trust each other, we'll fail. Let's work as one." Slowly, the soldiers nodded. The team started training together. They learned each other's ways. Some moves were different. Some commands were hard to understand. But they practiced again and again. Soon, they began to move like one unit. They left in a fast attack ship. Daniel sat at the front, watching the stars. Elyra stood beside him, reading maps and checking signals. The team rested in the back. Everyone was quiet, ready. As they reached the edge of enemy space, the ship slowed. They turned off most systems to avoid being seen. Only a few lights stayed on. They moved like a shadow. The supply base appeared in the distance. It was large and heavily guarded. Ships floated around it. Weapons pointed in all directions. But Daniel had a plan. They would enter through a weak point in the lower area. At the right moment, the team left the ship in small pods. Each pod carried 2 people. Daniel and Elyra shared one. They landed near a tunnel on the side of the base. The others landed nearby. They moved fast and quiet. Inside the tunnel, the air was thick and dark. Red lights blinked on the walls. Daniel led the way. Elyra followed, scanning for traps. They reached the center of the base. Fuel tanks lined the walls. Crates of weapons stood in stacks. The smell of metal filled the air. Daniel placed small charges in key spots. Elyra watched the door. Suddenly, a sound echoed. Enemy guards were coming. Daniel gave a quick sign. The team split up. Some held the guards back. Others helped set the last charges. Blasts lit up the hall. The team fought with skill and speed. Daniel stayed calm. Elyra fired with sharp aim. They worked like one. When the charges were ready, Daniel shouted, "Fall back!" The team ran through the tunnels. One soldier was hit. Virellian helped him walk. They made it to the pods just in time. The charges exploded. Fire lit the sky. The base broke into pieces. Back on the ship, the team cheered. Daniel checked on the wounded. Elyra sent the report to command. The mission was a success. Captain Harris appeared on the screen. "Well done. You hit them hard. They won't recover soon." The team smiled. The quiet ones laughed a little. They had done something big. They had done it together. That night, Daniel and Elyra sat in their chamber. They were tired but proud. "You led well," Elyra said. "So did you," Daniel said. She looked at him. "Do you think the war will end soon?" "I think we just made it one step closer," he said. They sat in silence. No words were needed. Outside, the stars looked the same. But something in the galaxy had changed. The enemy had lost power. The alliance had grown stronger. And in the heart of it all stood two people. Once strangers, now something more. They were ready for what came next. Together. The supply base attack had sent a clear message. The enemy was no longer safe, even deep in their space. But just when hope began to grow, a new danger appeared. Daniel and Elyra were called to the command room. Captain Harris stood beside a tall officer from Virellian command. Both looked serious. "We've discovered something," Harris said. "The enemy is building a secret weapon. Something big. Something powerful." The Virellian officer spoke next. "If they finish it, they could destroy whole fleets, maybe even planets." Elyra's face became pale. "Where is it?" The officer pointed to a star chart. "Here, on a hidden base, near a dying star." Daniel asked, "How much time do we have?" "Less than a week," Harris said. "We need someone to go there, find the weapon, and stop it before it's ready." Elyra stepped forward. "We'll go." Daniel nodded. Together, the mission was clear. No backup, no time. They would fly alone to a dangerous place, break into the base, and destroy the weapon. Failure would mean the war could be lost. The journey took 3 days. The closer they got to the dying star, the more dangerous space became. Waves of heat and light hit the ship. Shields shook. Metal creaked. But they kept going. The enemy base was hidden behind a dark moon. From space, it looked like rock. But scanners showed something below the surface. A large structure, an energy signal strong enough to be a weapon. Daniel landed the ship in a deep crater. They wore suits to protect from the heat. They moved across sharp rocks and entered a tunnel. Inside, the base was strange. Dark walls, red lights, machines that hummed with power. Elyra checked her scanner. "The core is deep underground," she said. "That must be where the weapon is." Daniel led the way. They passed guards hiding in shadows. They avoided cameras and silent alarms. Every step was careful. They reached a long hallway. At the end was a large door. Daniel placed a small device on the lock. The door opened slowly. Inside was a huge room. At the center stood the weapon. It looked like a tower made of fire and metal. Energy moved through thick cables. Lights blinked. Elyra stared. "It's almost complete." Daniel moved fast. He placed charges on the support beams. Elyra did the same on the power lines. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang. Red lights flashed. They had been seen. "We need to finish this now," Daniel said. Guards ran in. Shots were fired. Daniel pulled Elyra behind a wall. "You set the last charge." "I'll cover you," he said. Elyra nodded. She ran across the room as Daniel fought back. He hit 2 guards. One bullet grazed his leg. He fell, but kept firing. Elyra placed the last charge. She turned and ran to Daniel. He tried to stand but stumbled. She pulled him up. "We go together," she said. They ran through the hallway as the charges counted down. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The base shook. Fire burst behind them. They jumped into the tunnel. Rocks fell. Lights died. The blast pushed them forward. They crawled through dust and heat. They reached the ship just as the ground cracked behind them. Daniel flew the ship away. The base exploded in the distance. A ball of fire rose into the sky. They didn't speak for a while. Daniel's leg was bleeding. Elyra wrapped it with cloth. "You saved me again," he said. "We save each other, always," she said. They returned to the main ship. Command welcomed them like heroes. The weapon was gone. The enemy had lost their greatest hope. Captain Harris met them at the dock. "You two just changed the war," he said. Daniel smiled. Elyra stood beside him, calm and proud. That night, in their chamber, they sat quietly. The lights were low. The smell of flowers still filled the room. Daniel looked at Elyra. "I never thought it would come to this." "Neither did I," she said. "But I'm glad it did." Outside, the stars were brighter than before. The enemy was weaker. Peace was closer. And Daniel and Elyra were no longer just part of the war. They were part of the story that would help end it. Weeks passed after the mission. The war was not over, but things were changing. The enemy had lost their weapon. Human and Virellian forces were winning more battles. People on both sides started to believe peace was possible. Daniel and Elyra were no longer just a guard and a princess. Their mission had made them symbols. Some called them heroes. Others whispered stories about the chamber they shared and the bond they had built. But while others spoke of them, Daniel and Elyra kept their routine. They still lived in the same chamber. The room was the same, with 2 beds and soft lights. But now the silence was warm. They talked more, they laughed sometimes, they understood each other. One morning, a new message arrived. The High Command had called for a meeting. All important leaders from the human and Virellian sides would attend. It would happen on a space station near the center of the galaxy, and Daniel and Elyra were invited. When they reached the station, they were led into a large hall. Lights shone from the ceiling. Flags of many worlds hung from the walls. People spoke in many languages. Some had come from far planets. Some were old leaders. Some were young fighters. But all eyes turned to Daniel and Elyra when they entered. The human general stepped forward. "You two risked your lives to save many. Your courage gave us hope. Today, we want you to speak for us." A Virellian elder added, "We believe your story shows what is possible, not just peace, but trust." Daniel looked at Elyra. She gave a small nod. Daniel stepped forward. He did not prepare a speech. He spoke simply. "We were enemies once. We fought on different sides. We did not trust each other. This war forced us into the same room. Didn't like it at first. But then we saw each other not as enemies, but as people. We fought together. We suffered together. And now we believe peace is possible, not just on paper, but in hearts." Elyra stepped beside him. "He is right. We were forced to live together. We chose to understand each other. We learned that kindness is not from one world. It lives in all of us. This war has taken much, but it has also shown that even deep wounds can heal if we let them." The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Another joined. Soon the hall was full of applause. People stood. Even those who had been unsure before were now hopeful. That night, Daniel and Elyra sat by a window on the station. Stars floated outside. The galaxy felt calm. "Do you think it will last?" Daniel asked. Elyra looked at him. "Peace is not easy, but if people see what we saw, then yes, it can last." Daniel smiled. "I never thought I would care about a Virellian." Elyra smiled back. "And I never thought a human would become my closest friend." Their hands rested near each other, not touching, but close enough. The next day, peace talks began. They were long. There were arguments and slow progress, but there was also something new, a will to try. And whenever talks grew tense, leaders looked at Daniel and Elyra, and they remembered soon as ceasefire was signed. Then, plans for rebuilding began. Teams of humans and Virellians worked side by side. Ships once built for war now carried tools and supplies. Daniel and Elyra returned to their chamber. They didn't have to share it anymore, but they chose to. One evening, a young cadet knocked on their door. Is it true? She asked. Did you really change the war by sharing a room? Daniel laughed. We didn't plan to, but I guess it started that way, Elyra added. Sometimes great change begins in small spaces. The cadet smiled. Thank you. You give us hope. When she left, the room felt quiet again. But it was not the same silence from before. Daniel looked at Elyra. So what now? Elyra thought for a moment. Now we live. And we help others see what we saw. Outside their window, the stars kept shining. The war had not taken them. Nothing could. And somewhere, in the peace that was still growing, a guard and a princess had become something more than the roles they were given. They had become a story, a beginning.